Hey guys, so welcome to today's AMA. This is a little different. Today is February 24th, 2023. Just thought, it's been a few weeks since we've done an AMA. We usually go over the Zone weekly stats on Fridays, so why not just kind of combine everything, right? So that's what we decided to do. So it's a little different, but we'll also have the Zone weekly broken out with its podcast and some content as well separately outside of this in case you want to dive into that as well. So we're going to go over just some updates. We're going to go over obviously the Zone weekly stats and then your questions from the Discord channel. If you are not in the Discord server, go ahead and head over to our website at xetacapital.com. Scroll down, you'll see a link to get into the Discord server. We have a channel in there called AMA Questions. So go ahead and submit your questions in there. And we try to get to as many as we can. I don't know if I'll get to all of them in this AMA, but anything that we don't get to, we try to carry over to the next one. So before we get into the Zone weekly stats, what I do want to bring up is something that occurred just a few hours ago, actually, which is with RadioShack. So this is what you guys are seeing when you go to RadioShack right now, excuse me. And this is an error of some sorts. It looks like something with a hosting issue. We're working with them right now as best as we can. I know they're a little different and a little unresponsive, but we're working with them as best we can. What I would ask for you, until we resolve this, please do not interact with the buy-sell mechanisms, okay, of the token. Please use OTC only until we can resolve this, just because it's going to create some complications. Best to leave things as they are. Let's get this resolved and then move on from there. So, any updates on this, we'll let you know ASAP. I wanted to cover this very first thing because I just want to let you guys know, please use OTC only until we can resolve this. I'll post an announcement on it right after this AMA is finished and recorded. We're working with them as best we can. They're not exactly the most responsive, as you guys are aware. They're a little odd, okay? And that's another thing we're working on behind the scenes as well. So the timing's interesting, but nonetheless, please don't interact with that, with the Zeta token on the liquidity and any of that stuff until we can resolve whatever. It looks to me like a DApp hosting issue, okay? But let's get through this, but use OTC in the meantime. It's so interesting because OTC was designed to be like a secondary mechanism for people who didn't want the extreme volatility of a token. But right now, it's the only thing that really you can use that's really functional, okay? So please use that only, OTC only right now, and let us work through whatever is going on with RadioShack, and we will continue to keep you updated on that. So cover that first. I'll remind you again at the end. Let's go over to Zone weekly stats. I'm going to move my head. My head's in the way. Put it up there. Okay, perfect. So we had some interesting numbers since last week. So as you know, the HFT pools are being updated. As a matter of fact, I don't know what this percentage is. It's like 99% of them have already been updated, right? The new pools that just initialized recently have not been updated yet. So Brad's been literally not sleeping, working on it. He's making some improvements on it. And during the time he's been making the improvements, the performance has not been coming in. So nobody's losing anything. It's just once that update is pushed out, all of a sudden you'll see all the performance that was backlogged come in. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. If your pool has not updated, please wait until over the weekend for him to finalize that. He's finding different things as he works on it. So originally it was to push out a certain update, but then he noticed something else he could fix. So he's trying to fix a whole bunch of things and improve a whole bunch of things. So please give him some time. And we really appreciate everything Brad does and everything our team does, as well as the developers who don't sleep. And we'll continue updating you on that as well. So just wanted to point that out. But the key thing is you're not losing anything. There's just a little bit of a lag. And once that update's pushed out, you'll see all the back days that didn't update all of a sudden just update at one time. And a lot of people have already seen that as well, just to let you know. So total value locked is 11.3 million. Okay, that's a dramatic, that's almost a 6% increase in single week. Okay, so obviously we're looking at the week of February 24th. That's obvious. That's an additional 619K. It's actually 11.3,337,000. That represents zones with value locked behind them with the tokens and so forth. The lake level, of course, as you know, we're sitting at just under 150K. The lake did launch a little later in February, so some people have asked, when is it actually closing? Always closes at the end of the month, guys. No matter when it opens, it will always close at the end of the month, and then another one will open. So end of the month, which February, you know, the shorter month, so that's when it will close, at the end of February. So just kind of keep that in mind. Weekly zone growth is 5.7%. That is definitely more than we usually see. A little over 950 zones were made just this last week, and that's just under, it was 47.98%, so we'll just call it 48%, easy math. 48% more growth than the previous week of the last update. So that's fairly significant. We see a weekly reduction of circulating supply of 20%. That's actually 20.81%, but we're just round it down to be more conservative, right? That's in the past 7 days. That is from about 6150 down to 4870 in terms of the actual token quantity. That's because we have pools, we have lakes, we have all sorts of utility. We have more utility to come, of course, down the road. And there's something for you to do with your tokens, and it's something besides just selling. And it's something that makes XETA stand out, it makes us different, makes us unique, and it's something that I always wanted that nobody has ever built. So we had to do it ourselves, so to speak, right? Now the OTC, speaking of the OTC, the whole RadioShack issue, the OTC volume is dramatically increasing, actually. I've always encouraged you guys, even if you haven't tried the OTC, just put a token on there. Put a couple on there. You can always pull them off, right? Just see how efficient the system is. Because a lot of people are like, I don't want to wait. But you'll notice, again, I'm not predicting token price or anything, but you'll notice the token's been fairly steady, right? For quite a bit of time. Goes up, goes down, goes sideways, like everything else in crypto. And if you had your tokens on OTC, you're still capturing that range somewhere. It depends on when they sell, right? So you're not, in my opinion, okay, you're not losing anything by going into OTC. You're only gaining because you and another person, it's a peer-to-peer system. You list your XETA, they come by with the USD coin, you make the exchange with the smart contract, right? It's going to be whatever that token price is at that time. It's going to determine what the sale goes through for. So because the token's in such a tight band, a tight range, you're getting rid of your tokens, you're selling them inside that range. You're not losing anything, you're gaining because you're not causing additional volatility, okay? It's just that you have to be matched with a buyer. That's what the time delay is. I know in life sometimes instant gratification, it's hard to not have instant gratification, but a lot of things in life, patience you'll find pays off, quite literally in this instance, right? So the OTC, we're at 1.5 million, and I feel like we were just celebrating 1 million not even that long ago. Okay, we've been live less than 2 months on the OTC. We're already at 1.5 million volume. Again, it was a mechanism to create additional, let's say utility, but sort of utility, right? A method of you selling without harming the token price. Now it's right now the sole thing to use, because again, please use OTC only until we fix the RadioShack stuff. So it actually served a very interesting purpose, and the Lord's very interesting with his timing as always, right? Perfect, but we are sometimes caught a little by surprise, but it's sometimes a happy surprise. So anyways, it's good that we have a mechanism for people to buy and sell, even without the DEX, or with the DEX, having some issues right now. And there's no issues, by the way, with liquidity or funds. Everything is safe there. We just got to get their hosting issue resolved. And that will be resolved soon enough. So we saw just under 21% increase in volume on the OTC from the previous week, the previous zone weekly update. And the largest day was, I think, February 17th. It's just under 100,000. I think it was 97K in a single day. That was actually what had happened that day is interesting enough with the OTC, just briefly, is people in Prime, that's the group of people who bought into XETA Blue. We call the token model XETA Blue. It's kind of our internal name to differentiate from all the other stuff we're working on. people who bought into that in the pre-sale in June through July of 2022 were able to get into a special Prime chat. That Prime chat is currently not open for anybody else to join, but people in there were sharing on February 17th. The OTC had no listings, like several times throughout the day. No listings at all. And of course, the team helps with that, with buyback tokens and things like that get relisted, and that obviously helps further buybacks and further growing the company. But it's interesting because it kind of moved people and pushed them over to the DEX. People were kind of ping-ponging back and forth. It was very interesting because that hadn't happened before, and that happened last Friday just after our previous Zone Weekly update. So that OTC is getting cleared out. And I forgot to even mention, new update. I made a previous video to this one. Go and check it out. We worked with Thorify. Big thanks to the people at Thorify for working with us on improving the OTC system. So it's a first in, first out mechanism now. So what that means is if you list XETA tokens today, what happens is it goes into a queue. So you can only buy, if somebody's coming to buy XETA tokens, you can only buy the oldest listings first. You have to before the other ones get unlocked. So what that does is it now creates a proper queue system. Whereas before, you could click whatever listing you wanted, and sometimes somebody who was listing, say, one token 4 days ago just never got sold because nobody was looking for one token. They were looking for 50 or 100 or 20. So now you have to buy those in order to progress to the next listing. So it's really more of a fair, efficient system. So it's taking what has already been super efficient and super well adopted and just making it exponentially better, in my opinion. More fair, more efficient. So please check the OTC out if you haven't before. This is obviously the best time to do it since that's really where 100% of the buying and selling needs to be right now. So again, total value locked, 11.3 million. That's in zones. Zones created just under 150K in Lake. I think it's actually already 150K since it's snapshot. So kind of keep in mind these snapshots are sometimes several hours old. By the time I come on here and share it, the numbers are actually already higher. Just under 6% in weekly zones, new zone growth, and that is just over 950 zones in 1 week. That's actually a lot, and I kind of glanced over that, but that's actually a lot with the current number. It's over, what, 17,500? So a almost 6% increase in 1 week is actually pretty substantial for a project that we're really trying to maintain a steady growth rate. You see these projects, they go like this. They get some big influencer or they do some sort of viral marketing and the thing goes straight up and straight down. And obviously that's because there's no utility, but it's also because they're growing too quickly, right? So there's some wisdom in growing quickly. There's some wisdom in growing very steadily. And I think we are in that latter phase. Ladder camp, I should say. So reduction in circulating supply 20%. That's due to the lakes and HFT, more utility coming. Daily OTC volume on average is 37,000. That is up. It was originally 10, then 20, then 30. Now it's 37. We had our largest day of 97,000 and 1.5 million total OTC done. I'm going to move my head back and we're going to, I'll just touch briefly on some updates. As you well know, already touched on the RadioShack and the OTC thing, but also XETA Black is currently in testing. Some of our community members know about it and have been testing it alongside with us. Around 2 weeks that's been in testing. That will be rolled out in a very strategic, organized fashion, right? But it's to make sure that it's tested properly, it gets audited, we get feedback from the community, select members of the community that is, and then we move things forward in a very organized, strategic fashion. So we're not just throwing things out, crazily, right? So that will be rolled out. I don't have an exact date, but it will be fairly soon. It won't be months. And again, we have the current model, and when we started talking about this model, it was more to solve a problem where people, and I won't get into it too much, but there's a lot of people who like the idea of what we're doing, but they're not big in crypto. They may not understand crypto super well, and they certainly don't understand DeFi, and they certainly don't understand what I would consider to be a more gamified system, which is what XETA Blue being the token model, is. There's tiers, there's lakes, there's pools, there's buybacks, there's OTC, there's making your payments and expiration of zones and compound. It's a lot of stuff, right? And if you're not used to crypto and DeFi, it's super hard to wrap your mind around that. I mean, even if you try to explain it, I've explained it to some people and they're kind of like, okay, they kind of get it, but they don't. So XETA Black is very super simple, super elegant, straightforward, no volatility, easy to understand. It's just for people who their minds don't work that way, right? We have to understand that there's different customers for different products. I've run businesses before. If you had a business with one product, okay, even if that product was super successful, you should grow as a proper business by releasing more products. So XETA Blue, XETA Black, XETA Gold, XETA Red, XETA Platinum. We've discussed all this stuff and we have ideas for each one. The idea is to have a catalog of products, to be a real business. I feel like what's missing a lot in crypto is there's a business and then they kind of release a DeFi product and that's it. And they might improve upon it like what we're doing. You know, we've started with different facets of XETA Blue, but then right now kind of 80-20 style fashion. We've got HFT in different tiers that never existed in initial launch. You know, we kind of did away with blue chip. It just wasn't quite as popular, understandably so. We introduced the lake system, which is, you know, got a completely different benefit than the HFT pool by reducing your claim fees. We've got OTC, so we've grown, right? And I feel like a lot of businesses in crypto do that, but they never release another product. They never take what is their bread and butter and create a different way of getting there. And that's not really all it is. It's just a different way of obtaining the same goal, suited for somebody that's different. Right? That's exactly what different products are. They're branded and positioned to different type of customer to bring as many people into the fold and to receive that benefit as possible that you're offering. So that's exactly what XETA Black and all the other upcoming products will be. It doesn't mean XETA Blue isn't being worked on. It is, and we're doing other things with it. It's just, it's a different offering. It's a different journey to get to the same destination, if that makes sense. So we're going to get into some questions really briefly here. Or not briefly, but you know, I want to try to keep these AMAs about an hour if possible. We're about 15, 16 minutes in. So let's get to some questions and then we will go from there. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of run through these as quick as I can. Some of these are a few weeks old. Some of these were posted just today when I made the announcement in Discord. So we'll kind of get through as many as we can. So let's see. So Danny API, I'm going to scroll up here. He had asked if there's some way to do another layer of security with like a KYC AML in the event your wallet gets hacked. The challenge with this, Danny, is that somebody has to be the custodian of that data, right? And anytime you're pulling and hosting personal information, it's another layer, and it's a significant layer of security that has to be implemented, right? This is not basic security. And this is not that we use basic security, it's just, it's very personal information, right? So there would have to be some sort of custodian for that. Understood that if your account gets hacked, there's things that we often do for people. It's not a guarantee that we will, but you know, if you ask the community, there's many people we've helped in the past with hacked wallets that we needed to move over. That happened even in the pre-sale, believe it or not. People bought in the pre-sale before we launched, our wallet got hacked. We had to move, you know, like XPRE over to another wallet or allow the other wallet to build without XPRE. Anyway, so we've done it. It's just, it's a pain in the butt. And it's, anytime it's like a user error, and when I say user error, I don't mean that, you know, in a bad way, in a condescending way. I just mean literally if your wallet got hacked, it's something that was of your fault, right? So anything that's a user error is not typically a priority when it comes to a tech support ticket, but you do need to open a tech support ticket as soon as possible to get that resolved. As far as actually storing KYC AML, it's not something that I think we'll do anytime soon. So I hope that helps answer your question. I'm going to scroll down because a lot of these were answered in the last AMA. I'm going to go down to Master Yoda's question, which Greg Savage answered beautifully, but I'm kind of go over it anyway. He was asking how the withdrawal works from the HFT. So we click the button and begin the 28-day waiting period to receive the profits. Gaxis receives a notification of the withdrawal and they have to close out trades. Is this done on their side manually or somewhat automated? It is very manual. For compliance reasons, it has to be manual. You can't fully automate it. You just can't. It's just not possible. So I'm actually going to read what Greg Savage wrote because I think he gave such a great response. He says, we click the button on using the D app. which is a Zeta Capital Fund managed database. Zeta Capital Fund aggregates all the withdrawal requests and sends a lump sum amount over to Gaxis requesting a withdrawal. And then it processes the request, depending on the open positions, removes the amount from trading. This can take a while, as the more time they can still earn on top of it, and the fund can use the delta to open more pools and lakes. So sometimes it's not easy to get out of trades. It's not something you can do in a day. You take the big gold moves that took place end of December, really January into February, okay? To get out of those trades, if you're hedged enough, what ends up happening is you're trying to not create losing positions just to get out. But because the volatility is so significant, and if you go back and look, it was in gold, you're hedged to the degree that if you were to get out too quickly, you could create a losing position, which you don't want to do for the user or for the fund, right? So closing positions can also depend on the volatility in the market at the time. That's why we say up to 28 days, because you could literally get out in a day sometimes. Sometimes it can take a week. Sometimes it can take 2 weeks to get out. And then there's manual processes, as Greg says here, great, beautifully, I should say. There's checks that have to be done. There's all sorts of security processes in place. There's swapping the fiat into crypto, which is a fee that we don't charge for, by the way, because it is a fee to do that. And then finally confirming the wallet and sending it. That can take time. That's after getting out of positions, right? So it is a manual procedure and process, I should say, and it has to be for compliance reasons. But more importantly, depending on what the market's doing, this is why it can be difficult sometimes to even get out of positions. Sometimes you can get out of them really quickly. Sometimes you can get out of them within like a week or 10 days or 2 weeks or even 3 weeks. It really just depends, right? Because especially the larger the amount that you're withdrawing, the more difficult it can be to get out of certain positions. So that's where it becomes a little bit of a challenge, and that's why we have, for example, 25, 50, 75, and 100% of the amount of profits you can withdraw, because anything less than that, it's a lot easier to just say pull 25% rather than saying pull 10% or 5% or some manual number, because you have to have enough to be able to pull out based on the block sizes, based on the first month of compounding, things like that. It grows to a degree that it makes sense to actually pull out 25% of that, for example. So all of those factor in, but it's a great question. Thanks for asking. Really appreciate it. Baller's asking, any news on Zeta Black? Go back to the beginning of this, not the beginning of the AMA, but just before I got into the questions and I discussed Zeta Black. It's currently in testing right now. Hope to roll it out soon, but it has to be rolled out in a very organized fashion. Right? What happened to the Lake Older token price being honored? Afraid I don't understand the question, Baller. If you want to DM me, maybe I can answer the question a little bit. Maybe I'm just not understanding. I don't understand. The lake came out long after the old token, so maybe I'm not understanding. Anyway, help me with that and DM me, and maybe I can, or repost your question here if you wouldn't mind, and maybe I can, get some clarification and answer that for you. Appreciate it. Let's see. All the updating that was done by Brad. That's more of a Brad question. That's the reason he's doing it and not other people. There's a lot of regression testing. Please Google what regression testing is. I'm not going to get into that. It's too detailed. But it's to make sure that the pools update more efficiently, right? And to make sure that there's no issues with the potential tiers going above their caps, things like that. And there's, anytime you roll out an update like this, you have to go back and test all of the past performance to make sure it's still going to function properly, right? Part of what regression testing is. So please go and Google that. But big thanks to Brad, and specifics would be up to him to answer. Updated roadmap. We've discussed an updated roadmap. What we've kind of found, Gravy Train, is that it's sometimes best not to give out dates. I've found this, honestly. So I learned from my own mistakes. I think it's best to not always give out actual dates, but a roadmap of what we're working on, yes. But the dates, if we give any, will be very broad. Maybe don't even give them at all, just because, things come up, right? You give dates, even if you try to project them out far enough, things come up, right? It's human nature. It's the nature of the world, especially nature of development, especially when you're building something that doesn't yet exist yet. And then you find out, oh, this is actually going to take much longer than originally said because of X, Y, and Z. We didn't know X, Y, and Z until we did ABC, right? So best not to put out dates. But as far as what we're working on, yes, absolutely. HFT report from Gaxis. So the audit's been done for a few weeks. What we're waiting on is something else to release it at the same time. That makes sense? So the audit can be released right now. It's a great audit. I think you guys will love it. It's fantastic. It's just we want to combine it with something, if that makes sense. So appreciate your patience. And we also have a so there's going to be the audit. There's going to be an update with the SRO situation with Gaxis as well. That's kind of like the combined piece that we're missing. So once that is with it, we'll put them both out at the same time. But also there is a financial report, like you guys saw those financial reports we're doing every month. That's also going to be created for the last quarter of 2022 and can be combined even with all that, right? So it's taking the audit, stripping out confidential pieces of business information, prettying that up, combining that with the other piece that we're waiting on, and then combining that with the financial report. So we're waiting on. It's done though. You guys will see it very soon. I know I keep saying that, but I do appreciate you guys' patience with that when marketing. We actually already, and I know I keep saying this, and I apologize, so I don't like to give dates. I've learned my lesson on that, but I don't know how much I want to say. I've shared this with some very select people, but there is some marketing that I think you guys are going to be very shocked with in a very good way. There is somebody that is so big, and we're talking outside of crypto, not crypto, so big that it would be a bucket list thing for me to even talk to this person. Okay? I'm going to kind of leave that alone and not get into that too much. But that's combined with a lot of other moving pieces with marketing, right? Because the thing is this. We would like to get XETA black out, like officially, and combine the marketing at the same time, right? So that's based on lining up some pieces behind the scenes, lining up the testing to be finished, lining up the audit to be finished, and just some different pieces, right? I know it keeps getting pushed out, but there's reasons for it, right? Again, what I've seen is projects, not all projects, but a lot will launch. They'll do marketing right away. Product's not completely finished. We got the RadioShack stuff, which is the next question that we need to resolve. There's just some pieces that need to be fixed, in my opinion, before you start spending a lot of money to get eyeballs on something that is having some issues, right? And it's not like big issues, but enough to where it might be kind of strange for somebody, like, you know what I mean? So anyway, just some pieces that, the audit, black, the RadioShack stuff, the Q4 financial report, things like that as well, and get that all lined up together. So I hope that makes sense. It's not an easy question to answer because there is no one answer, right? Because every time I would say it's going to happen by this date, something needs to be lined up, right? And that just takes a little bit of time. So again, appreciate you bearing with us, but it will happen. I'm also reading your second question. Aromis, excuse me if I'm saying your name wrong. Hypothetical situation. What would be the best way to help someone get their XETA journey started who wanted to start with a high dollar amount that may require more than one wallet? Okay, so I'd give you two answers to that. Two possibilities, okay? None of this is financial advice. I don't provide financial advice. I certainly don't do that as a project founder. So this is just answering your question about paths you could possibly take. It's obviously got to be up to you and the other person what to do, and shoulder that responsibility. So I'm just going to kind of disclaimer that. But what you could do is two possibilities. If the person wants to get started in XETA Blue, which is the token, it'll get referred to XETA Blue. If that person wanted to get started in XETA Blue, I would recommend going to OTC to buy. Obviously, we need you guys to do that right now anyway until the RadioShack thing is resolved. But I would recommend that anyway because your question says someone who wanted to get their journey started with a high dollar amount. Well, if you go to the DEX, as much as it'd be great to have big buys, I think personally it'd be better to move that volume to the OTC. It's my own personal opinion. Helps the company, it helps people who are utilizing it, it helps all sorts of people, right? And it removes that crazy volatility because what will happen is this person will buy on the DEX, right? Theoretically, they could buy on the DEX with a lot of money. Price goes straight up. People see it, they sell into it, price goes right back down, but the person bought at the higher price. So they're actually, I don't want to say cheating themselves, but they're losing value, right? So I would recommend if the person wants to get into Zeta Blue, go to OTC. I don't know what a high dollar amount is, so I don't know what value you're referring to, but go to OTC and just buy the tokens on OTC. There's plenty of listings on there, right? Just has to go through the oldest ones first in, first out kind of thing. If he wants to get into Zeta Black, just needs to wait for that to come out. That's the best thing I can tell you on that. So I hope that answers your question. Any news on RadioShack? Already answered that. Realistically, how long do you think Zeta is self-sustained? I don't know, like, can you clarify what self-sustainable means? That word means different things to different people. Crypto Keeper, if you wouldn't mind clarifying, what does self-sustainable mean? I want to make sure if I answer this question, I understand the question, because that can mean different things to different people. Some people mean the business, some people mean a token price, some people mean token supply, some people, they mean different things, right? So if you can just clarify that, either DM me or post back here and just let me know what you mean by that, I'd appreciate it. With things going well in regards to profits, is there a possibility of looking into doing more lines of charity work? Yeah, so I actually have an idea that I've pitched to Brad and some of the other folks about doing some charity work, specifically having like a fund more designed around charities. So yes, the answer is yes. It just needs to be something that's worked out. You know, I don't want to do a robbing from Peter to pay Paul sort of situation. So I want to make sure that it works. So yes, I have an idea for it, and I would like to ideally put it into its own fund to make that work. And I'll provide more details on that as well. Do you know if Q2 2023 will expect private equity launch? So private equity has not had a lot of demand. That's really the thing about it, right? So let's look at private equity for a minute. Do we still want to do it? Yes. The answer is yes, we want to do it. I don't know exactly when. And the reason for it is because private equity is it's going to be a great utility. However, the demand is HFT. It's very obvious. Right? That's the reason we got rid of Blue Chip. Okay, Blue Chip was a very super low risk, and I would say low cash flow ROI, kind of unsexy, right? To be honest, it was kind of cool to be able to like go into different sectors. That was really cool. But the demand's HFT. Now, if the demand for Blue Chip was low to the degree that, you know, slow performance, slow ROI, slow cash flow, things like that, private equity would be even slower than Blue Chip, just to let you know, because private equity is a long-term hold. That's like buying Bitcoin right now, waiting for it to go to 200K. Will it go to 200K? Most likely. When? I don't know. So private equity would be in a very similar boat, because when you get into private equity, you're getting into it before it IPOs. When will it IPO? Well, companies can keep pushing out IPOs. They could say it's going to IPO next year. You get the next year, and it still has an IPO. Now, in private equity, you can't actually buy and sell private equity positions. But, you know, from the end user perspective of getting into private equity and Zeta, you would be holding that for a long time. It's just the nature of the situation, right? So cash flow wise, it would be slow, if nothing, for months, if not years, potentially, right? So it will launch. I don't know when, but I think the participation and the demand will not be as high as people think, especially when you put that alongside of the HFT. You know, it's kind of funny because we get kind of spoiled by these numbers. It's 25% a month, 20, 15. Everything else sounds like kind of like a joke after you get that, right? So I think if you had private equity side by side with HFT, the demand would be very, very low, personally. And from a cash flow perspective, it doesn't turn cash around very quickly in the Zeta Capital Fund. It doesn't mean we're not doing it. It just means it's not like top of the list right now, right? But it will come out, and we do have plans for it. So I hope that kind of clarifies that. Accelerators are in the pipeline. So let me explain. So accelerators, I gotta see how I can best kind of like explain this in a way that makes sense. So I have to move my head here because you can't even see the question. I just realized. So, whoops, I'll move my head. Burning Ice is asking a question. Are accelerators still in the pipeline? They are. So the deal with accelerators is this. So the entire system, without getting too technical, is built like a Swiss watch. Everything works in concert. And that's the back end of XETA Blue with the zones and the tiers and the utility. Everything is built like a Swiss watch, okay? Everything relies on everything else. You remove one piece, you remove the entire system from functioning the way it should. What that means is when you introduce something, it can cause a lot of, potentially, I should say, chaos, okay? So while it sounds simple in theory to introduce, whether it's an NFT or something else, to increase the emissions, what we've decided is that accelerators also decrease the lifespan. They do both. So it's a give and take. That's the idea behind accelerators. It's a give and take. So because of that, it can really cause a lot of problems on the back end with the way the system is designed so elegantly, like this watch analogy I'm using. So, can it be done? Yes. Will it be done? I think it'll be done in a different fashion. We actually, Gavin had come up with a very interesting way to do it. That's a little different, but still accomplishes the same thing. Keep your eyes out for that. I'll give you more details on that as we get along. But what we found is by introducing accelerators on a technical level, it can wreak some havoc behind the scenes, right? And we've tested this, so this is the reason we know it. To make it work properly and not create this like chaos I'm referencing here, what would end up happening is there would have to be a lot of different things in the pipeline kind of put to the side burner, and it's just not really doable. So we think there's a way to do it, accomplish the same thing, I should say, but do it differently, right? And more details to come on that as well. I don't see any other questions. I think that's going to do it for now. I hope this answers a lot of questions. It may not. Some answers sometimes are vague. They're vague, for a reason. But I hope it gives you a little bit of insight just behind the scenes of, what we're doing, what we're working on, the stats each week, answer some of your questions. Sometimes these will be live. Sometimes they'll be pre-recorded. Sometimes I'll get on camera. Sometimes I won't. A little bit of a change-up, I think, is different and good. It allows a little bit of a variety and clarity for different things. And yeah, I think sometimes getting on camera is just good. So I don't see any other questions. Again, feel free to, I know there's a couple people I didn't understand your questions. Just DM me or post here some clarification, and I will be sure to give you the best answer as possible. As another reminder, before we end, I'm just going to remind you again on the RadioShack thing. Don't interact with that right now. Okay, even if you find a roundabout way to buy and sell, use OTC right now. Just use OTC right now because we got to get that resolved. I don't want to introduce any unknowns, right? That's going to cause issues over there because the DApp is obviously having the problems. Some people are buying and selling in a roundabout way. I would encourage you not to do that. A, it's going to cost you more if you do that. But B, it's going to kind of screw with the liquidity a little bit. I would ask that you guys just kind of hold off. Use OTC, right? There's plenty of listings on there. Might take you a couple days, especially if there's more people going over there. But with the queue system, your listing is guaranteed to get bought at some point, as long as there's buyers coming in. If you can see significant amount of increased volume coming in. So my ask is that you kindly please go to OTC only for right now. Let us resolve this issue with RadioShack, and then we will go from there. And obviously keep you guys updated, and I'll post an announcement with the video as well when this gets uploaded and rolled out. So I hope this gives a little bit of insight into what's going on, what we're working on, and I hope this answers some of your questions. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the whole community. Appreciate you tuning in, as always. And in the description below, you can find chapters for this video. So that means that you can see chapters of the different points that I talk about with the timestamp. And if you click the timestamp, you can go to the exact question or area you want without having to watch the whole thing. That's a little bit of a tip. I don't always upload those, but if I have some more time like today, I will upload those. Those will be in the description below. So until next time, take care. Appreciate you guys. God bless. We'll see you in the next one.